All right, so welcome everybody. Um, this is our alumni Q&A panel with some of our BMS alum and some of our upper year students. So I believe that we are going to get started here. Now that everybody's slowly joining, I'll give till 2:35 or so to let a few more people sprinkle in. Yeah, so for our agenda, we have introductions to our panelists, and we have some questions to go over with them. Yeah, so our panelist presentation, and then just a general Q&A. So it'll be open to you guys if you have any questions close to the end, or if anything comes up, feel free to raise your hand or to add any comments in the chat, and we'll be moderating that as we go. So here are panelists. Feel free to introduce yourselves. Lakshanya, if you want to go first.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Lakshanya. I'm a fourth year BMS student, so not an alumni yet, but almost. I'm graduating this year. I'm in the BMS program, and I'm doing the dual degree Master of Management as well. I am very happy to be president of Mssa this year, and I was previously VP Marketing and content writer as well. Throughout my time at UBC, I've done co-op, and that's been really cool. I have marketing and communication co-op experience with Technical Safety BC and BC Infrastructure Benefits. Technical safety, they're like a safety regulator. If you've ever been in an elevator and you've seen the certified by Technical Safety BC, that's them. So I got to do public safety marketing campaigns and work with them, and that was really cool. And I also worked at BCIB, which is like a crown corporation that hires underrepresented people into infrastructure jobs and stuff. And that was really cool to work at a more fast-paced government type comms job. And yeah, I think those are kind of the main things I can talk about. I also did Jumpstart. I was an orientation leader if anyone has any questions about that as well. But yeah. Indiana, do you want to go?
Yeah, hi, my name is Indiana. I'm also a fourth year BMS and I'm the secretary right now for Mssa. So basically I take meeting minutes and I hang out and do whatever Lakshanya tells me to do. What I'm here to talk about is I did a Go Global summer seminar, which is basically like you go on a trip for however long. Mine was just like 10 days. Um, and you get course credits for it and you do whatever activity it is set out. So for mine, we went to a film festival in Portugal where we got to view a lot of films and go to networking dinners and things in this little beach town. It was really great. So that's what I'll probably mostly be talking about. Otherwise, I've worked as a website coordinator during the summer and done different social media and digital media creation things.
Hey everyone, my name's Ananya, so I think I'm one of the first alums to be introduced. I graduated last year, so no, the year before that, 2022, November. Um, I just did the BMS program, but then I did work learn on the side. So I did work learn for a year and a half, and I worked as a communications assistant during my time in my third and fourth year, um, for the research and innovation division at UBC. So it's a little office in Walter Corner Library. It was really fun. During my time, I was also VP communications. I think me and both Ariel were part of the first team that built Mssa. So we kind of took it off the ground a little bit, and that was really exciting. We were the first team to get funding. So it's really exciting to be back and see this in action. And then I was co-president for my fourth year as well. Yeah, and now I work I'm a corporate girly out in the wild. So I think I have a little bit about that to talk to you guys about as well. So I'm excited. On to you, Ariel.
Hi, I'm Ariel. I also did the BMS plus dual degree program. I finished my media studies degree in December of 2022, but graduated May 2023. And I went straight into the portion that I just finished this past December, and I'm graduating in May. During my time at UBC, I started off as like the VP of events at Mssa, and then I switched to being the co-president with Ananya for Mssa in my 4th year. Also during that time, I completed the arts co-op program. I worked both at the UBC School of Social Work during COVID. I was basically just helping profs move everything online. And then after that, I did a longer co-op. I was working at an education technology startup, and I was doing marketing for them. And then after that, I also did work learn for 2 years in marketing at the UBC Botanical Garden.
All right, thank you for your introductions. We're now going to move into some of our questions. So we're first starting off with some general comments about the Bachelor of Media Studies Master's Management program, and sort of what that's like and what that's like after you graduate, or what the program's like in general.
I guess I can start with like the undergraduate portion. I've only had experience so far with the undergraduate comm classes. Did you want me to talk a little bit more about like what the experience in the classes has been, or like the application process, or where did you want me to start?
Either of those work, whatever one you feel.
So I applied to be part of in my 2nd year. I didn't apply in my 1st year, but I applied at the end of my 1st year. And the application process was pretty straightforward. I think I just had to submit like a video application and like why I wanted to join And I personally wanted to join because I wanted a little bit more of like a background on kind of business management skills, because I've always been interested in like business management and leadership and things like that. And kind of working on how to hone my like media interests and background with a little bit more like hard skills and like job application type things. And so the application process was pretty straightforward. And then actually being in the undergraduate comm classes, I've taken like an intro to business class, which is just like a starter class on like everything to do with business and like case studies and stuff like that. I've also taken a business communications class, which that was very cool. And finance and accounting, which I haven't done math since high school until I took those classes. So that was quite rough, but that was cool to like learn about and use different part of my brain. And then now I'm taking organizational behavior and marketing. So it's like a broad with birth of classes. And I've been able to meet really cool people through the program as well, because it's specifically for people who aren't in solder. They're like anyone from any other undergraduate discipline who wants to also gain like business and management and leadership skills. So it's been really cool to meet people outside of like media studies and outside of arts and kind of get to know what their programs are like and things like that. Yeah.
I can talk a bit about the management portion after you graduate from BMS. I think it was a really interesting experience. I think most people would describe it as like a mix between high school and summer camp, but a master's degree, because it's super condensed. It's only 6 months. You start in June and you end in December. And your cohort is split into 2 classes of like 50 people, and you stick with those people, except halfway through you switch, but you stick with those people for all of your classes, and you kind of like move together, which makes it feel a little bit like high school. Um, I think the biggest adjustment for people is that it's very different. It's a different type of education than what your undergrad would be like. It's very fast paced. You're thrown a lot of information all at once. I think the pace is the biggest thing that people have to adjust to, not so much the content, but more like the volume of work. You have a lot of assignments due every single day. Just because it's so short, they have to squeeze it all in. But at the beginning, it was really difficult, but I think like as you ease into it, it gets a lot better, and you make a lot of really good friends, and build a lot of connections. And I think the business school does a really good job of giving you opportunities to look for jobs, look for opportunities in Vancouver. and they have a lot of networking events and things like that. So I think it's a really good complement to the BMS degree if you want to go the business route with media studies. But yeah, I'm happy to answer any more specific questions about the master's portion if anyone has any.
All right, so with that, we could probably move on to Go Global section, and then if anybody thinks of any questions, then we can ask them at the open Q&A at the end.
Yeah, so for Go Global, I guess I can talk a little bit about the process. Again, I did the summer seminar, so I'm sure it's a little bit of a longer process to be going on like full exchange. But basically, like they'll have a list of all the available ones online, which you can probably look at during your first term. It'll be due your application around like December or January. So which is rough because you're like in the middle of finals, but you do have to make your application. But you can just go through and find whatever feels suitable for you. You don't actually have to go for things that are specifically for your program. Like on mine, one of my friends was there that I met there. She does like biotech or whatever, and she was at this film seminar. So you just go through, do the application, and then I was talking to some people that were at Go Global. When I got an interview, I was really nervous, but with that, they told me like if you got the interview, it's probably just a vibe check. Like they just want to make sure that you're not like going just to go like party in a foreign country or whatever. So as soon as you get the interview, you can kind of relax, like you probably have it, and then for us, we just chatted with them and like two other people. They asked us some questions. They had a dog in the room. It was great. And then, yeah, we took a course during May. I think once a week we met for a few hours, once or twice a week, just going over some background and more like academic stuff. And then one on the trip. And you have a few assignments usually due a little bit after the trip. So you're trying to work on it a little bit while you're there. And then you kind of have to crush all of that and cram it in like a week. But then, yeah, you get credits just for having been and having done your assignments. In my experience, the profs were really relaxed. I'm sure in some, they might be a little more intense if you pick a more like academically rigorous one. But for us, we just kind of got to go and experience everything and learn while we were there. And then write like an essay, or we made a video as well.
Thank you, Indiana. We move on to the UBC co-op now. So whoever had experience in co-op, if they want to share any of their experiences with that.
I can go first. I think my co-op experience was really interesting. So I applied for co-op in my first year, and the application process, I think it was a 3-part application process. I think I had to write an essay. I had to like answer the questionnaire thing, and I also had to do a group interview, like a panel interview. So I went to a room and there was like 5 other people interviewing at the same time. And then after that, you usually get like an email saying whether you got in or not. I heard that the application process for arts co-op can be a little bit competitive just because there's so many people in the faculty and a lot of people are applying for it. And so if people don't get in the first time, sometimes they apply again and they'll get in the second time. But I think if you have the opportunity to do it, I would really recommend it. I think it was one of the most positive takeaways that I took from my undergrad. My first co-op experience was a bit weird because it was during the first year of the pandemic. So no one was getting hired. But the co-op program like made an exception where you could start your co-op term a little bit later. So I was able to get something by the beginning of July. So I only did 2 months of co-op that summer for July and August, and I was working at the UBC School of Social Work as a project assistant. And that one wasn't really like directly what I was looking for. Like I was looking for more marketing roles, but working in higher education led me to get my second co-op job. So I think just sticking it out really paid off for me because my second co-op job was really beneficial. It was an 8-month co-op. The following, I started January to August, so it was 8 months, and I was working in an 8-person team, or the company was only 8 people. So working in like a really small team allowed me to try like different roles and kind of work outside of my job title. And I think as like one of my first jobs like in my life, in I guess like in like a media related field, it was really cool to try different things and learn about different roles in tech. And I think that kind of directed my career interest path. Like now I'm interested in design and product management. And yeah, I think that experience like really tied my whole university experience together. I don't know, like Shania, you want to talk a little bit more about co-op?
Yeah, no, I definitely agree that like my two co-op terms were super, super valuable, and I learned a lot about kind of what kind of career path I wanted to take. I think BMS is a very like broad program, and I definitely going into it, I was like, I don't know what I want to do at all. But through my co-op experiences, I was able to kind of figure out the kind of like teams I would like to work in. The first co-op job I had, it was more of like a larger team and like a more well-established like marketing department specifically. I think I worked with like 8 other people just in marketing, and we also had like a separate internal comms team as well that we would work with and stuff like that. And that was super cool to learn how like a larger team worked. But it wasn't until my second co-op where it was just me and like 2 other people within the marketing team, and it was at a Crown Corp. So it was like every single day was something different, and it was like government related. So it was like all of our to-dos would have to deal with like policy and like changing events and like news and things like that. And that was super exciting. And it was definitely through my second co-op job that I learned a lot more about kind of like government comms, and also I gained a lot more graphic design experience, and I that was super valuable because it wasn't until then that like I learned that I really loved graphic design, and that was something that like I was passionate about. And so I think like kind of the work experience led me to understand a little bit more about myself and like what I want my career path to kind of look like. And I am still in touch with like all of like both of my managers from both co-op terms, and like the connections I was able to make through those jobs were really, really fruitful and like valuable, I think. In terms of like searching for co-op jobs specifically, I definitely think the search term is very intensive and difficult. It can be, especially right now, I think, because the job market is what it is. There isn't a lot of stuff out there, but I think once you get your first co-op, I think the second search term becomes a lot easier. And the thing that helped me the most during my search term was remembering that like it only takes one acceptance, like it only takes one interview to like get your foot in the door, and like keeping your options open and being open to like different experiences, I think would make your co-op experience a lot more worthwhile. Yeah.
Another thing that I took away from co-op, just to like add another thing, I think that whole interview process was really useful. A lot of times you have to apply to like 30 plus jobs to get like a few interviews. But after your first co-op term, usually your second search term, you're doing like a lot of interviews back to back in order to get a second one, and you'll get a lot of rejection, which sucks. But I think like experiencing the rejection and experiencing all the different interviews is really useful, and it's really good practice for after university when you're trying to look for a full-time job.
Yeah, I agree. And I think I did a lot of like interview practice with the co-op office specifically, which was super helpful. They have like a worksheet thing that you can fill out, where you can fill out like your strengths, your weaknesses, and like specific scenarios to talk about in your interviews. And like I used those were super helpful, and like being able to practice with the co-op office as well was very, very like useful, I think. So they do have resources that are available. Um, it's up to you to take the initiative to use them, I think.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So the next one that we're going to move into is work learn.
Ariel, if you want, I can kick it off.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I didn't apply for co-op. I thought about it before I came to UBC, and I was like, oh my God, I'm so excited. Like I'll do a co-op term and everything. But then when I got here, I when I got to Vancouver and I got to UBC, I realized that I wanted to finish my degree faster as compared to taking the extra time. That was just some people might resonate with this, some people might not. You can take it with a grain of salt, I guess. It's just different perspectives. I wanted it to finish it as soon as possible. But I also wanted the work experience. So then I think work learn was the best option for me because I was working and studying at the same time. And I was still getting the experience, obviously, maybe not to the extent that Ariel or Lakshanya had gotten it, but I definitely I felt really good about myself to get my work loan position because it gave me a lot of structure while I was studying. Like it gave me perspective. Like some days I would go into the office and work with like people who were twice my age. And then I would go into class and I would talk shit with my friends. And like it was a really nice balance to have while studying because I still felt like a university child or like a kid or whatever you want to call it, person, I don't know. But I also felt really mature and like I was given responsibilities that I wouldn't have otherwise been given. Um, I could and working within UBC because I worked at the research and innovation office, which was really cool. And especially during COVID, it was like all the COVID research that was coming out of UBC would go through our office and we'd put it on the website. And like I was like hands-on on most of those projects, and that was really cool for me to see, especially like, oh, when's the vaccine coming out, and like what's the update on like the scientific front. Um, so it gave me a really nice insight into how the the university works. So I think when you work for a university like UBC, you meet different kinds of people that work there and have so much perspective and so much knowledge. And like I said, it gives you like a sense of responsibility and it makes you feel like an adult, even though you're like going to the pit on a Wednesday. Like it's a nice balance. So I think for me, this like my work learn experience is what helped me get my job after I graduated. So the one I'm in right now. Um, it de- because I worked there for a year and I fully understood the company or like the department I was working in, I had a lot of like hands-on experience. So when I was getting asked questions in my interviews after I graduated, being like, "Oh, what kind of experience do you have? Like, explain a time where you had a manager you didn't get along with, or what project were you working on? What do you like about marketing? Like, what do you like about web design?" I had things to talk about, and I at the same time, I didn't extend my degree. Graduated in 4.5 years. So for me, this was ideal. And now I will stop talking. Ariel, if you have anything you want to say, please go ahead.
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about mine as well. I think to be honest, the reason why I applied for Work Learn, it was after I finished all my co-op terms. And I came out of co-op and I got really used to like the work environment. And I think to be honest, like during my whole undergrad degree, I think I was the happiest during my long co-op term. I think because I just had like a really nice work-life balance. And it was nice to get paid. It was nice to like keep learning, but like not in a school setting. And so I wanted to continue that work experience while I was finishing my degree. And so I kind of felt like, oh, like I don't have another option, but I need to keep working. And so I applied for Work Learn. I applied to a few, and I was going to interview with. I think the way you apply is through like there's a website. I forget what it's called, but there's like a whole portal for you to apply to a bunch of Work Learn positions at UBC. The nice thing about Work Learn is that they know you're a student, and they keep in mind that you're like going to be studying at the same time, so they don't like bombard you with a whole bunch of projects, a whole bunch of stuff to like they usually say like school comes first. But yeah, I remember I interviewed with the UBC Botanical Garden and I was going to interview with a few other departments, but the UBC Botanical Garden ended up giving me an offer right away, and so I took that position, and it was also in marketing. And I think it was really cool to work in a subdivision of UBC where like the teams are a little bit smaller. So a lot of my experiences, the teams are a lot smaller. But I think I stayed there for 2 years. So I think being able to like grow slowly in a position for that amount of time was really useful. And it gave me a lot of stability the same way that Ananya had mentioned. Like having the work on the side and in school, it was really nice to have both learning avenues, I guess, and having that structure as well. And they were really flexible when I switched into the MM. I asked them if I could work remotely. Just I don't know if any of you have been to the botanical garden, but it's really out of the way. It's really far. So I asked if I could work remotely, and they were okay with it. And so it's a really good choice for people who want like a flexible working environment that's kind of in the media field while you're studying. And if you're the same as Ananya and you don't want to extend your degree, it's a really good option for that as well.
I'm also gonna just mention that the process of applying to work loan is similar to that of co-op, because
Mhm.
Ariel and I were applying for co-op and work loan positions at the same time. And it was just like the way we did everything together. I'm just gonna put that one out there. So we like I applied to maybe 40 positions at UBC. I heard back from maybe 5, and I got 1. And the pay is decent. Like you get paid, like back then we got paid like maybe 19 something an hour, so it's a little bit more than minimum wage. And especially as a student, if you're working 10 hours a week, it makes you feel good about yourself. So the flexibility, like Ariel said, was amazing. If you have days that you don't study, like if you have Mondays and Fridays off and you work on those days, it's a nice break in your schedule as well. And it doesn't hurt to like know people on campus for like very stupid reasons. Like you get to hear about like, oh, what's going on in the back end of like them planning out the next year, or what's happening with the financial strategy at UBC. But you get to know these like little insights while working for the university that just make it more valuable for you, either when you're coming out of it, or you can leverage that in different ways. And it's honestly up to you how you want to structure your own university career, but that was just the way she and I did it. So yeah.
Another thing that
Yeah.
I noticed with Workpoint is that a bunch of people that I was working with, like in the same office, they were previously Workpoint students, but then they were offered a full-time position after they graduated. So they switched to like a different position in the same department, but it was full-time. Usually it's unionized at UBC specifically, and yeah, so it's a good opportunity as well if you want to open the doors to having something like lined up after university. I feel like I moved to Australia. And so I think if I had stayed in Canada, that could have been an option for me. But since I moved, it obviously wasn't.
Yeah, thank you. That's a good segue into our first question and like the specific question part. So reflecting on your time at UBC, how did the Bachelor in Media Studies program prepare you for your career in the media industry? And this is open to alumni and our upper year students. So feel free to answer that one.
Who wants to go first?
I can go first. I think in terms of like the career and media industry, I would say that like leadership positions, co-op and workland, like all work related positions prepared me for the media industry. I don't actually have a job right now. I'm kind of like in this middle purgatory area right now because I moved and it's a lot harder to find full-time jobs in a different country, and also like the economy is not great right now. So it's a bit hard right now, but I think in terms of like job applications and like looking for like knowing what I want to look for and what I want to apply for, I think all of that comes from like my experiences either in leadership in Mssa or throughout my co-op terms and work learn term as well.
I think echoing Ariel's statement, I kept myself busy all 4 years I was there, all 4.5 years. Like whether it was like I was a jumpstart leader, I worked at Ike's Cafe for a bit, I did Mssa for a few years. I don't know if I already said that, but and then with my work loan program, like I was always busy with one thing or the other, and especially during like COVID, I was part of like the AMS peer support group as well for their social media team. So I tried to keep as busy as I could outside of school. Like school was hard, yes, but BMS in comparison to most programs is fun because of the classes that we have, the professors we have, the kinds of projects that we do, or we did, I did. It's all group work. It's fun. It's creative. So you have that creative outlet where it doesn't feel like, oh my God, I have to write like a 15,000 word essay about like a topic I don't even like. So it's a little bit different where school doesn't always feel like school. Like, yeah, you have deliverables, but I enjoyed the actual content of the program. So then outside of it, I was like, I just like to stay busy. So I stayed as busy as I could. I got to know so many people because of that from like different parts of the world, different parts of like in terms of passions. I somehow got roped into like the philosophy student association in my fourth year, and I don't even do philosophy. I didn't like philosophy, and that was just a different, like it unlocked a different side of my brain, and I was like, okay, cool, I could be into it. I don't want it to be my whole life, but I don't have to take a subject in it, but I like these people, so I'm going to hang out with them and I get to talk about the things they did in class. So a lot of what I did in that sense kind of set me up for success coming out of it because again, you build your network, you build your social skills, your interpersonal skills, and that is valued so much in like the corporate world, and that's what I can talk about. Um, if you're a decent person and you can have a conversation with somebody and not make them feel like you're a robot and they're a robot and you want to gain something from them always, it takes you a long way. It takes you further than you know. So maybe that's a long-winded answer to this, but yeah.
I also think the structure of the media studies program is really unique in the sense that it's super broad. And at least in like the later years, you can kind of customize your degree a little bit and choose like core plus courses and electives that are really in your interest. And so developing those skills in those specific areas of interest to you, and also like meeting people, like what Ananya was saying, I think soft skills are a really big thing. And nowadays, a lot of media positions look for more soft skills to see if like you can work well in a team, communicate well, and that you fit like company culture. Like a lot of the times, companies are willing to train you as long as you fit their culture. And so having those soft skills and developing them in different areas, like throughout your degree and in like the specific area of interest is really beneficial. And I think it's really easy to do so in the media studies program.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think now's a good time to move on to the second question we have here, which is what specific skills or knowledge gained from the program have you found most valuable in professional endeavors? And that sort of ties back to what you were just saying. So if you just want to continue
Yeah.
that a little bit, and then we can move on to the third one.
Sure. I think if we talk about like hard skills that we learned in media studies, I feel like at least in my like area of like work like interest, I think the coding skills will never be like not valuable. I think learning some of the coding skills, and like in the MM you learn a little bit more. So I think those are always really useful, especially if you want to go into like website design or any kind of like coding related media field. But I also think like writing skills are really useful, and you do a lot of it in media studies. And so if you're looking for like communication type roles, having a lot of written and like presentation skills are really useful as well.
Honestly, every project you do, you be like in the BMS program teaches you a hard skill that you will end up using. Um, like Ariel was mentioning, like the presentation skills, the writing skills, like writing for different mediums, writing for different audiences, forming questions, because like if you're getting into marketing or if you're getting into comms, you need to build surveys and like how do you approach that? I think in third year we had a course about like media audiences. And like I go back to my files and like my notes sometimes even now and like I like, oh, how should I phrase this? So I don't think there's any one specific skill I can call out because I genuinely believe that the hard skills that this program taught me, I use it on a day-to-day basis. Like maybe I don't use Photoshop or Premiere as much as I in my current role. Like we moved to Canva because like I use Canva on a daily basis right now because the level of the people in my team isn't as high as me. So Canva is so intuitive that I don't need Photoshop sometimes. Like obviously I can be snobby and say, oh my God, we should use Photoshop for anything else, like nothing else, but that's not going to get you anywhere because you have to match the level that people are at in your team outside of school. So just try and pick up as many of the skills. You don't have to be the best in them. Like you don't have to be the best in writing. You don't have to be the best in Photoshop or whatever it is. But if you pick up those skills and have that variety in your pocket, you are more valuable to a future employer because you can do it all. Like you're the jack of all trades. And I think that is undervalued. I think everyone wants to have like that one specific skill that keeps you standing out. But I think if you have a lot of those skills in your pocket, you're more valuable.
I think that we do a lot of projects in BMS and a lot of group work, and a lot of those can be used on your resume or in your cover letter as experiences, like examples of experiences to show that you have certain skills. So like when you're applying for jobs, like you should always give like an example to back up something that you say that you have. And so for example, like for me, for my first co-op job, like the positions that I had before were not related to media at all. So like I was like a ski instructor and stuff before. So it was like very much like unrelated. But I used a lot of like projects that we did in BMS on my resume and cover letter to apply for jobs. And so even having had like work experiences like during my undergrad, I think using some of those projects in like interview answers and stuff like that can be useful as well. And I think it's nice that our program has a lot of group work and a lot of projects like that that you can use.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. That's very validating for a lot of students that I've
Yeah.
talked to who are worried about not being very good at one specific thing. So I guess, again, tying on to that, question number 3, are there any particular professors, courses, or other resources within the Bachelor of Media Studies program that you found especially influential or beneficial to your career?
I don't know if this one fully had like a direct correlation to my career development, but um it tied everything together for me. So I forget the professor's name and I've forgotten most things from UBC, but it was the German media studies course that I did in my 4th year. It was the most fun I've ever had. And it was the wildest roller coaster I've ever been on in every class because he would start off with one topic and then end up somewhere else. And I'd be like, this is such a like whirlwind of emotions. Okay, that was not on topic, but I think German media studies was fun. All the information studies courses, especially, I think taught me some really hard skills that I use to make graphics right now and just in terms of like developing my design brain. So I think it was like the infographics course that we did in 4th year and then just the information studies about social media trends and everything. I think that was in 2nd year. So all Richard's classes, the second Richard, not the first one. So yeah, I think those were definitely very influential. And then so Richard was really sweet to me and Ariel because we were also Mssa presidents at the time, and he was, I don't know if he's still chairman or the head of this department, but back then he was. And we worked with him both on the Mssa front and we worked with him in class. So that definitely gave us that personal connect to the department. I never reached out to him for a reference, but I know that if I wanted it and I needed it for grad school in the future, that I know he would give it to me. Or he would be more than willing to offer it, his like words of advice because we had that personal connect with him. So I think if you can, like if you like a course, like you want to ask for extra credit, like have a conversation with your professors, go for like what's that thing called when they have like that time allotted?
Office hours?
Office hours. Oh, been out of school for so long. So if you go for office hours, like I know nobody goes and it makes no sense to go, but just like take like a $2 coffee and take it to your professor and be like, hey, I was getting coffee for myself. Here's one for you. It's a nice gesture. It doesn't have to be expensive. And then you can like talk to him about his favorite subject over a cup of coffee. And then you build that personal connect, and then that will take you so much further than anything else. And that if you can take anything away from what I'm trying to say in this whole like 1 hour, is like build your personal connections with your peers and your professors early on, because I promise you it'll be so validating to reach out to them when you're outside university.
Yeah, I think kind of like piggybacking on top of that, I think like networking within the program is really valuable. And it's like not only just like networking with people to try and see like who can help you in like your field of interest, but like just building connections with people, because the more genuine the connection, the easier it is going to be to like ask for like a referral or ask for like a reference. Because oftentimes like it can be really awkward to ask for a reference or a referral and things like that. But if it's someone that you have a connection with, it's gonna be like a no-brainer for both sides. Like they'd be willing to give you a reference or a referral. And I think like the frustrating thing about the job market is that oftentimes like you need a connection in the company to like get your foot in, especially if it's like if you're just starting out like straight out of university. And so like what Ananya was saying, like Richard is definitely one of the profs from BMS that we had a connection with. And like out of all the like media science people, like he'd be able to recognize us, which is really nice to know that there's like a prof there that we had a connection with. In terms of like specific courses, I feel like this is the same thing, like the information studies course I think stood out the most for me, that are the most like correlated with my career path. Sometimes like I think in the media studies program, it can be frustrating to take some courses that kind of aren't in your career interest. And so sometimes when I remember when I was in the courses, like I was kind of like, what am I doing? Like I'm taking these courses and I know that they're not going to be beneficial to my career. So like, what am I doing? But I think like pinpointing the ones that you are really interested in and like building a connection with those professors, because you know that they're like it's kind of related to what you want to do in career wise, is really helpful for your career development. Even just asking for questions or asking for advice about like different positions can be really helpful from profs.
Yeah. This is maybe an unconventional resource, but if the BMS cohort in itself is so tight knit, like from your second year, you know who's in the CAP program and you know who's in BMS, and you're there with these people for the next 3.5 years, depending on when you graduate. I promise you, and this is not just because Ariel and I are really close friends, but I promise you, having Ariel by my side throughout the program made it fun. It made it better. And it honestly, coming out of the program, we can look back and say, hey, remember when we learned this then? How can I apply it now to what I'm doing, either in my job, in my job search, because we had that connection in the program. So I think your peers are your biggest resource because they're in the same boat as you. So like when you're looking for a job, they're looking for a job. Or if you got a job, you can help somebody else get a job. And when you pave that forward, I think it's a very reassuring fact. So I know everyone has their friends outside of the BMS, and like you come to class and then you go back home and you have your roommates and you have your own lives. And that's okay. I'm not saying that's not what you need to do, but if you can even have like 1 or 2 people within the program that have your back, I promise you it'll go so much further than just the 4 years, because I wouldn't have gotten through like the 4 years without Ariel. And it just made it more fun. So again, it's it's an unconventional resource, but it's something that I think was very valuable for me.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank
I
you for that. So we just have 2 more questions for the general Q&A part, and then we will move into the open Q&A. So our next question here is, how did you navigate internships or experiential learning opportunities during your studies, and how did they contribute to your growth? Yeah.
I think
Oh, sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead. I've talked too
I
much.
think we kind of touched on this a little bit earlier. But I think like for me personally, like doing co-op and doing yeah, like having work experience and navigating that on top of like my BMS studies really kind of honed in what I was interested in and the kind of like work experience and skills I wanted to build further. It was kind of through co-op and through my experiential learning opportunities that I figured out that I want to be focusing on more like graphic design, written communication, visual communication type roles within like the public sector specifically. Yeah, I think that was very helpful to like pursue. I definitely think experiential learning is like important to pursue outside of just like your classes.
I guess like my experience is very similar to like Shania's, and I think like the co-op and work learn were really beneficial to that, and being able to like do it while you're in school is really useful because you learn things and you immediately apply them in your roles that you have. And so I think that's really useful for like growth as a media professional. I think also like some of the experiential learning experiences that I had like in the program as well. Like I remember like the Seabell project was one of the projects that I used on my in my cover letter and in interviews to like get my first co-op job. But then also like for anyone who's doing like the there's a really big experiential learning project in the program. It's called a community business project, and you work with like nonprofit organizations, and you're kind of like matched with one, and you work with them for like over a month. Um, and you do like a whole like business analysis, and you basically act as like little consultants for them. And a lot of times like our partner that we worked with, they like gave us all job opportunities afterwards. And so it was a really cool thing to like work with people and like see how what you're learning in school applies directly to like a job setting. Yeah, so I think both ones like in courses and outside of courses were useful.
I think I've covered all most of these topics, so you don't have to. I've already said my piece for this one.
All right, awesome. So our fifth and last question is, looking back, is there anything you wish you had known or done differently during your time in BMS that you could have better prepared you for your career or better prepared you for what your plans are now?
I think my experience is kind of unique in the sense that like I decided to move really far away. And so I couldn't have predicted like how different and how difficult the job market would be in Australia compared to Canada. And I think like the biggest thing that I'm feeling right now is like lack of connections here. Like I did put in a lot of work to like network and everything back home, but I think like it's difficult to do that overseas. And so I mean it's kind of uncomfortable to like reach out to people on LinkedIn and like ask for coffee chats and things like that. But like I think if I had practiced more of that in my undergrad, like like cold call people on LinkedIn to ask for coffee chats and networking, I think it would make my experience here a little bit easier. In terms of like what I would have done differently specifically in the media studies program, I'm not exactly sure. I feel like maybe networking with more professors. Like I know we built a really good relationship with Richard, but I think like going to more office hours, going to like building more of a relationship with those profs is always useful. Like for example, like I applied for a scholarship in the and um I think I was like lacking a few like professor references, like one wasn't enough. And so having more professor connections would have been more beneficial, because I think I definitely did a good job at networking with my peers, but I think like networking with profs was a little bit more difficult, and also like networking with strangers was also more difficult.
Just to echo Ariel's point about like the uncomfortableness of like not having a job after you graduate. I went through that last year around this time. I was an international student. I don't know how many people on this call are international students, but I was waiting for my work permit to come in. I wish I had known that these were the steps I needed to take right after I graduated in depth, because I knew there was a broad idea of like, oh, these are the steps I need to get a job. I needed to graduate, I needed to get the letter, I needed to apply for my work permit, but I didn't know how long that process was going to take. It was a really big shock to me to know that I wouldn't get the work permit for 3 months. And then I was given misinformation, wrong information, I don't know. And I was told I couldn't work during that time. So I was unemployed and I was really sad and depressed. And I was just like, it wasn't a fun time. So I think looking back, I wish I had started that process earlier of like knowing what I need to do right after I graduate. And the reason why I didn't think about it before is because there was this like block in my head. I was like, I don't want to think past graduation. I don't want to have to deal with that uncomfortable thought of like not being a student anymore. Like it was really daunting and it was really scary to like know that, okay, 4 years are done. Everyone says real life begins and now I'm on my own. So I didn't think about it, but I think dealing with those uncomfortable like questions about, do I want to go into my master's? Do I want to study? Or like if I do want to work, what is needed for me to work? And again, if you were born and raised here, that's different topic. But if there are any international students on the call and this is valuable for you, you're always free to reach out to me even outside this call. And if you need like guidance on like just the process, I'm more than happy to help. Um, BMS specifically, I think echoing Ariel's statement about having more personal connections with profs, I think it doesn't hurt like ever. And maybe being a little more involved in like creative projects outside BMS. Like I wish I'd worked, like somebody asked me in second year being like, oh, do you want to be a part of my film? I wish I'd said yes. It would have been a cool experience looking back, but I said no because it was raining and I was not feeling like I wanted to leave the house and I stayed home. And I know that can happen to most people. So those are just small things, like say yes to every opportunity you have. Yeah.
All right, thank you
I
so
don't know if this
much.
is a bit sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, you can finish what you're saying there.
Oh, I think this might be a little bit off topic, but I think like there's a lot of pressure that gets put on students to like have something lined up right after you graduate. And I think that kind of expectation is a little bit unrealistic, especially like now the job market is so competitive and it's also like not great right now. So I think like knowing that it's okay to like take a break from working and studying in between, and also like using time off to like work on your experiences and maybe travel, maybe like do things that you've been wanting to do that you couldn't do while you were in school. I think it gives another perspective, instead of just like going all the time like from school into work, like finding the time to like grow yourself as a professional like on your own, I think is also valuable. Like Ananya said, like there's a point of time, like usually there's a point of time after you graduate and before you find a job where you're unemployed and it can feel really uncomfortable. But I think like I'm getting more comfortable with it now, but I think at the beginning it was like really hard and it felt like I'm really alone in it. But also it's nice to know that like you're definitely not alone, and like most people coming out of university experience it.
And then just to echo it, I don't know if we have like a time limit, but I can keep this really brief. 100% agree. Don't feel like you need to have anything lined up and like be prepared for your career. Like you don't even know where your career is going to go. Like you're not supposed to have an idea of like what you want to do the day you graduate. Like if you are so confused the day you graduate, like I don't know what I'm going to do tomorrow. Like I'm just going to wake up and like go for brunch with my friends. That's okay. Like celebrate the fact that you graduated. Celebrate the fact that you made it out alive and you have all your sanity, because going through 4 years of university can be tough. Like you go through so much on a personal level, a professional level, and academically, that if anyone tells you and has that expectation of you to have everything figured out the day after, I'm sorry, you can tell them to like, that's the door, please go there. Like this is not, there's no pressure, because everybody that I know that has graduated has had a lull. Like even if they've had a job lined up the day after, they've quit like 6 months in being like, I don't enjoy it. And then they've gone through an unemployment phase, and then they found a job that maybe they like better, or like the people are better. So don't discount the fact that there is value in taking a break, and there's value in pausing and realizing like, hey, I don't have my shit figured out, and that's okay. Like go to the beach, enjoy the summer, and everything will be okay. So my 2 cents, take it or leave it. It's everyone goes through it. It's so normal.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. Now we're gonna move on to the general Q&A. If anybody has some brief questions before we wrap up. I believe that some were dropped in our Instagram group. Story post.
I think there's one in the like Q&A section in the like in the Zoom. Someone asked, how long did it take you to get a co-op position, and how did you deal with burnout/anxiety, especially in your first search term? I think for me, I'm gonna be honest, that my entire first search term, I like don't remember anything from, because I was also taking 6 classes at the time and I was doing my search term. So it was just like a very high intensity, high anxiety time in general. I think it took me, I started applying like October, beginning of October, and I think I got my job like mid to late November, if I remember correctly. It definitely took me applying to like so many positions. At one point, I think I was submitting like a resume and cover letter like multiple times a day. And I think it definitely helped to keep in mind that like it was just, I just needed one interview, like I just needed one acceptance. And that really got me through. And I also like I went to the co-op office often to like practice interviewing and like asking questions, asking how to like get advice on my resume and my cover letter. I also know, I don't know if the Arts Co-op Student Association still has this program, but when I was in my first search term, I applied to they had like a mentorship mentee type program. And so I was able to be matched with a mentor who had gone through Arts Co-op before. And um, I still talk to her pretty regularly. Like I emailed her last week asking for feedback on my resume. I grab coffee with her all the time, and that's been really helpful of like having like a regular contact mentor type person to like ask questions about the job search process, ask questions about post grad, things like that. Um, yeah, but it's definitely, you're not alone in like the anxiety and burnout of job search, and like it will work out. And even I think right now, especially like the job market isn't great. There are other options, even if you don't get a co-op job in your first search term. There are so many other options, like we talked about before, with like work learn and things like that. But yeah.
I think my experience was a little bit different just because I was applying for my first co-op term in 2020. But I think I started applying. So I actually like lightened my course load to be able to do the search term. I was supposed to take the like accounting course that term, but I decided to push it because I knew that one was hard. And so yeah, I'll answer quickly, but I think I started like maybe February, and I was applying to so many jobs and I didn't get anything until like June, starting in July. And I think it was really anxiety inducing, but I think during that time I was getting a lot of reassurance from the co-op office that like things are really bad right now. No one's hiring, the world's like ending. And so I think it was just like a unique experience that like if you're doing co-op now, you wouldn't have to deal with that. But I think it's really normal it's like a numbers game with applying for your first job. Like you just have to get as many applications out there and do as many interviews as you can and see which one sticks, and taking like the first opportunity that you get, because you never know like how it's going to lead into your next positions. And the nice thing with co-op is that it's only temporary. So like even if you don't like it, like it'll usually lead you somewhere, even if it's not the best fit for you.
All right, thank you so much. So unless anybody else has some final words to say, we need to wrap up here pretty soon. Yeah, so if everybody could just give a very warm virtual applause for all of our panelists, especially Ananya and Ariel. Thank you for tuning in with us. And of course, Lakshanya and Indiana. So just a few little housekeeping things before we end our little panel. Spring Headshots, we have a fun little event coming up, 2.0 by the Cherry Blossoms, March 28th from 2:30 to 4:30 p.m. We're going to be putting out marketing for that on our social media within the next few days. And then our next big event is going to be the Media Studies Gala, which is going to be announced shortly on April 8th from 6 to 9, which will be a semi-formal media showcase for all of our BMS program. And then we are also doing an open invite to alum and faculty. So Ariel and Ananya, you're welcome to join. We'll have more details out for that very shortly, but we do not expect you to come back to Canada from Australia for that. So yeah, thank you so much for joining. And thank you everybody for participating and for asking questions. Yeah.
Small thing, I don't know, this was probably helpful for me back when I was a student, but if anyone wants to like connect on Instagram or LinkedIn and whatever feels comfortable to you guys, just feel free to ask Lakshanya for our details. I know that she has both of us. Even if you have just like stupid questions, there are no stupid questions about BMS life, post-grad life. Yeah, you can always use us as a resource.
Yeah, for sure. Always reach out if you guys have any more questions or if you guys want to connect.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again.
Yeah,
It was very nice chatting.
it's nice to
Thank
be
you guys
back.
so much for
Have a
joining.
great day, guys. Enjoy
Thank
class.
You as well.
Bye.
Slay. For those of you that are still on the call, we have our AGM right now, right after this. So if you guys could please stay on for a little bit longer, just to kind of hear from whoever is going to be running to be an exec at Mssa next term, that would be great. We officially start at 3:40, so I think maybe we can wait a few minutes for more people to trickle in. But
Are we
excited.
going to be recording the AGM?
No, I'm gonna stop the recording. Thank you.